Do you remember your first day of school, or falling off your bicycle for the very first time? Most likely you do. However, you guaranteed do not remember the exact moment you first spoke consciously. Think about it. The most complex and vital skill in your life, the ability to express your thoughts and understand the world, was mastered entirely unconsciously. And then, your brain literally burned every single trace of that learning process. Why did our mind achieve one of the most complex cognitive breakthroughs in the universe, only to leave us without a single file in our memories folder? Where did this massive experience disappear to? And why are we fundamentally incapable of remembering how we learned to speak? Block 1. You remember nothing from before age 3 or 4. Early memories of lying in a crib or taking your first steps are almost certainly false memories constructed by your brain from stories, family photos, and home videos. Neuroscience calls this total wipeout infantile amnesia. For a long time, scientists assumed infants simply couldn't form long-term memories due to an underdeveloped brain. However, modern experiments prove the exact opposite. Babies possess remarkable memory for faces, parental voices, cause and effect relationships, and specific events even weeks after they occur. So where does that initial data go? The primary culprit is the hippocampus, the brain's dispatcher that processes sensory inputs and routes them for permanent storage in the cerebral cortex. During early childhood, the hippocampus undergoes explosive neurogenesis, generating hundreds of thousands of new neurons and trillions of synaptic connections every second. This rapid expansion is essential for a child to adapt to an unfamiliar world. However, this construction pace has a drastic side effect. Imagine a dense forest where you walk the exact same path daily. If giant new trees suddenly sprout at breakneck speed, they physically disrupt and block that original trail. That is what happens in an infant's hippocampus. Continuous streams of new neurons physically overwrite and alter existing memory networks. Old records are sacrificed to build a more powerful architecture. Two additional factors complete this memory wipe: lack of self-awareness. To remember an event as a personal experience, you need an autobiographical self. This self-concept only emerges around 18 to 24 months. Before that, memories form without being attached to a personal me. Incompatible encoding. Adults encode memories using words, narratives, and categories. Infants process the world through sensory images, tactile sensations, and emotional sparks. Trying to access infant memories with an adult verbal query is like trying to play a modern .docx file on a cassette player. The formats are simply incompatible. Block 2. Two memory systems. To understand why acquiring language slips away from our consciousness, we must examine how data is archived in the human brain. Memory is not a single vault. It relies on two distinct modes: explicit and implicit. Explicit, declarative memory handles facts, dates, names, and conscious events. It requires focus and active effort. When you study a textbook for an exam, your brain records the factual information alongside the context, the desk, the lighting, and your concentration. You remember the learning process because your conscious mind was actively engaged in it. Implicit, procedural memory operates as the body's subconscious autopilot. It manages motor skills, physical habits, and automatic behavior patterns, such as riding a bicycle or swimming. You don't consciously calculate balance vectors or joint angles. Your brain executes the movements automatically without conscious intervention. First, language acquisition relies almost entirely on implicit memory. Toddlers do not sit with grammar books or memorize tables of irregular verbs. They master speech through a process called statistical learning. An infant's brain acts as a high-powered supercomputer continuously analyzing surrounding acoustic chaos. To an outsider, an unfamiliar foreign language sounds like an unbroken stream of noise without clear pauses. An infant hears the exact same thing, but their brain mathematically calculates which syllables follow one another most frequently. For example, the brain detects that specific sound pairs occur together constantly, while others never do. Based on millions of these subperceptual calculations, the brain parses continuous audio into distinct words and grammar rules, completely below the level of conscious awareness. Because this massive processing occurs deep within the subconscious, you never form an explicit memory of the learning process itself. You don't remember learning to speak for the same reason you don't remember your brain learning to process visual signals from your retinas or coordinate breathing muscles. The brain delivers only the finished product, fluent speech. Block 3. The biological window. Learning a foreign language as an adult is notoriously difficult. We struggle with vocabulary, grammar rules, accents, and mental translation. Yet a 2-year-old child absorbs a complex language system effortlessly without dictionaries, tutors, or explicit instruction. This stark contrast stems from the critical period hypothesis, also known as the biological window of neuroplasticity, formulated by neurosurgeon Wilder Penfield and expanded by linguist Eric Lenneberg. It states that the human brain is genetically hardwired for optimal, effortless language absorption from birth until the onset of puberty. During early childhood, brain plasticity is at its absolute peak. A newborn arrives as a universal citizen of the world, equipped to distinguish every phoneme, every subtle sound variation across all human languages. A baby born in Moscow is equally prepared to master Mandarin, Swahili, or English. However, maintaining this universal sensitivity requires immense metabolic energy. Around 10 to 12 months of age, the brain initiates a drastic optimization process called synaptic pruning. The brain aggressively cuts away unused neural connections. If an infant hears only English, the brain disconnects neural pathways tuned to unused foreign sounds. First language acquisition during this window relies on innate structures. Linguist Noam Chomsky proposed that humans possess an innate language acquisition device, LAD, a genetically encoded blueprint for language logic. Children don't build language from scratch. They simply activate built-in matrices using environmental input. When puberty arrives, this biological window closes. Neuroplasticity drops, the LAD becomes inactive, and synaptic pruning concludes its primary work. Adults learning a new language must rely on artificial cognitive tools, conscious logic, flashcards, and grammar rules. This makes adult learning laborious, conscious, and highly memorable. Your first language was wired directly into your growing brain structure as natural biological growth, like cutting teeth or developing vision. Block 4. The matrix of thought. There is a deeper, philosophical reason why language acquisition remains hidden from conscious memory. We often view language as an external tool, like a hammer or a smartphone, that we pick up to communicate and set aside when we are silent. But for your native language, this assumption is incorrect. Your native tongue is not a tool you use. It is the fundamental operating system on which all your mental processes run. When you read, plan your day, or argue with yourself, you conduct a continuous inner monologue. You think in words and sentence structures. Your memory, logic, and perception of cause and effect depend entirely on linguistic categories. Before mastering speech, a child's mental world is fundamentally different. Developmental psychologist Lev Vygotsky showed that infant thought is visual, action-oriented, and purely emotional. Lacking an inner voice, infants process the world through sensory impressions and immediate physical impulses. Language integration follows a distinct evolutionary progression. Social speech, used purely as a tool to express basic needs. Water, give. Egocentric speech. Around age 3, children begin narrating their actions aloud while playing alone. Now I put the blue block here, oh it fell. They use speech to direct their own behavior. Inner speech. By age 6 or 7, this narration folds inward, transforming into our internal voice and conscious thought. This transformation creates a fascinating paradox. You cannot remember learning to speak because before that point, you thought in a completely different way. You lacked the internal linguistic voice required to record, index, and retrieve those early experiences. To access your pre-language state, you would have to completely shut down your current cognitive operating system, leaving you with no internal mechanism to process or hold the memory. Language is not an object inside your memory. It is memory's architect. You cannot remember learning language because that very process created the I trying to remember it. Block 5. Evolution and conclusion. The inability to recall learning to speak is not a flaw or a biological glitch. It is a masterpiece of evolutionary design and resource optimization. The human brain is the most metabolically expensive organ in the body, comprising roughly 2% of total body weight. It consumes over 20% of the body's energy at rest. To conserve vital resources, evolution strictly eliminates unnecessary data storage. Imagine if your brain preserved every single detail of learning your native language. Your internal storage would be permanently clogged with gigabytes of useless technical logs, tens of thousands of mispronounced words, grammatical trial and error attempts, vocal cord adjustments, and raw statistical calculations of sound frequencies. Storing these intermediate processing steps offers zero survival value to an adult. Evolution applies a core engineering principle. Once a complex system becomes fully automated, all temporary files, drafts, and construction scaffolding are permanently deleted. You don't need source code compilation logs to run software, nor do you need to understand combustion mechanics to drive a car. To survive, socialize, and thrive, adults need instant, seamless, and automatic access to meaning. If you had to consciously navigate memories of early speech struggles before forming a sentence, your communication would be painfully slow and inefficient. Forgetting how you learned to speak demonstrates the supreme efficiency of human memory. In your earliest years, your brain accomplished one of the greatest cognitive feats in the known universe, transforming ambient environmental noise into a structured system of meaning. Having completed that task, it quietly cleared away the scaffolding, leaving you with a flawless, lifelong operating system for thought, expression, and human connection.